I was 26 the night everything finally reached a breaking point. But the story really began years earlier. My name is Brandon, and I grew up in a house that never truly felt like mine. My biological father left when I was young. When my mom remarried, I tried to stay hopeful. I was 10, and I believed a new dad meant more support and stability. Instead, I met a man who seemed to assess me the first day and quietly decide I was competition. His name is Doug. He always looked like he was frowning. He brought his son, Tyler, into our lives as well. Tyler was 2 years older and quickly became the favorite. From the start, the household dynamic shifted. Rules were flexible for him. If he left a mess in the living room, it was dismissed as normal behavior. If I forgot to take out the trash once, I received a lecture about responsibility and becoming a man. Mom usually stayed silent, caught between defending me and keeping peace in the house. At the time, I kept quiet. I believed that if I worked harder, earned better grades, and helped more at home, they would eventually see me as family. But no matter what I did, Tyler received the praise. He earned average grades and was called smart. I earned straight A's and was warned not to get arrogant. If he skipped practice, Doug called him independent. If I missed one soccer game because I was sick, I was accused of letting the team down. Individually, these moments seemed minor. Repeated daily, they built pressure that never really left. By college, I was living two separate lives. On campus, I was treated like an adult. At home, Doug acted as if everything I owned came from his wallet. That was the most frustrating part. My grandparents on my dad's side paid most of my tuition. They sent spending money monthly and covered my car insurance. I worked part-time jobs and saved carefully. After I turned 18, Doug did not financially support me, but he often reminded me how much I supposedly owed him for raising me. Last month, I moved back home temporarily to save for a down payment on my own place. I paid rent, contributed to groceries, and covered the Wi-Fi bill because Doug refused to upgrade the slow plan while complaining about it constantly. I didn't mind helping. I wanted to contribute like an adult, but in Doug's view, my contributions did not matter. One Sunday dinner, Tyler was talking about a promotion he had received. I congratulated him sincerely. As usual, Doug turned it into a comparison. He praised Tyler for stepping up and expressed how proud he was. Then he looked directly at me and said, "You'll never be half the man your stepbrother is." At first, I laughed, unsure how to respond. But something in me shifted. Years of silence surfaced. I stood up. I said calmly, "Then let him pay your bills. I'm done." The table went quiet. Mom dropped her fork. She looked at me and said, "What are you talking about? We haven't seen a cent from you." That statement changed everything. After years of paying toward groceries, utilities, and household expenses, she believed I had contributed nothing. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke evenly but firmly. Tyler leaned back and said casually, "You don't even pay rent." "I pay rent every month," I replied. $200 in cash to Mom. Mom frowned. "That's not rent. That's just helping with groceries." I let out a short laugh. "I buy the groceries." I pulled a receipt from my wallet. "This is from 3 days ago. $176 for the week, paid by me. And you're saying you haven't seen a cent." Doug crossed his arms. "You're overreacting. Everyone contributes. That's what families do." "Families also acknowledge it," I said. My voice tightened slightly. "You've treated me like I'm freeloading while I'm covering half the household expenses." "Watch your tone," Doug said sharply. "I've watched my tone my whole life in this house," I replied quietly. "I'm done doing that." Tyler muttered, "Drama queen." I turned to him. "You got a brand new truck last year with family money. I'm saving for a used apartment. You don't pay bills here, but somehow I'm the issue." "I earned that truck," he said. "Dad said—" "Exactly," I interrupted. "Dad said, not Mom, not me. And it wasn't his money either. You're still paying off your own car loan." Doug's expression changed. Mom stepped in. "Brandon, that's enough. You're being ungrateful. Doug has done so much for you." "What exactly?" I asked. "My grandparents paid my tuition. I paid my gas, insurance, phone bill, Wi-Fi, and groceries. What am I supposed to be grateful for?" She had no answer. Doug stood up. "You're crossing a line, son." "I'm not your son?" I said evenly. That ended the conversation. That night, I reviewed months of transactions and receipts. I wanted documentation, not just frustration. The next morning, I printed and organized every grocery receipt, Wi-Fi bill, and transfer. I left the stack on the kitchen table. When I returned from work, it was gone. A note from Mom said, "We need to talk tonight." At dinner, Tyler was absent. Mom admitted I had contributed more than they realized. Doug said my attitude was the problem. When I pointed out that I had quietly paid for essentials without acknowledgement, Doug said, "If you don't like it here, you're free to leave." Mom did not object. "Fine," I said, "I will." Over the next few days, I made practical adjustments. I canceled the Wi-Fi account in my name. I transferred utilities back to theirs. I stopped buying groceries. I did not argue. I simply stopped covering costs. By the end of the week, the fridge was nearly empty. When Doug questioned it, I said, "I assumed you'd handle it." The Wi-Fi shut off. Tyler complained. Doug confronted me. I replied calmly, "You said I was free to leave. I'm starting with the responsibilities." Then things escalated. One morning, I found my bedroom disturbed. Drawers open. Items missing. Most importantly, the envelope containing over $3,000 in down payment savings was gone. I confronted them. Doug admitted he had entered my room. "You don't pay enough for privacy," he said. "Consider the money rent." Mom called it borrowing. She admitted they used it to cover bills and Tyler's truck payment. That clarified everything. I packed a bag and stayed with a friend temporarily. I didn't want an emotional confrontation. I wanted clarity and strategy. A few days later, I returned briefly and overheard Doug admit he had called my boss, suggesting I was unstable and might not be a good fit for the job. I stepped into the room and asked quietly, "You called my boss?" Doug said it was for my own good. That was the final break. The next morning, I packed everything that mattered and left permanently. I did not leave a note. I moved into my friend Eric's apartment. He offered support without questions. In 1 week, I had lost my savings, my job, and any remaining trust in my family. The only messages I received were from Tyler, making light of the situation. Instead of responding, I focused on rebuilding. I updated my resume, contacted former colleagues, and searched for new opportunities. I considered calling my former boss to explain, but I hesitated. If Doug was willing to interfere once, he might try again. At that point, the situation was no longer just about money. It was about independence, accountability, and ensuring that no one else could control my future. In the evenings, Eric and I would sit on his balcony with takeout containers between us. Most of the time, he let me sit quietly. Every now and then, though, he would say something that interrupted my thoughts. "You know," he said one night, "this might be the best thing that ever happened to you." I looked at him. "I just lost everything I worked for." "Yeah," he replied with a shrug. "But now you know exactly where you stand. No more illusions. Yeah, no more wasting effort trying to win approval from people who were never going to give it." I didn't like admitting it, but he had a point. The longer I stayed away, the clearer things became. Living in that house had distorted my sense of normal. I no longer had to brace myself for criticism every time I entered the kitchen. I didn't have to listen to Doug's comments about becoming a man or Tyler's constant remarks. For the first time in years, I could breathe. But the anger remained. If anything, it became more focused. Each time I opened my banking app and saw my savings gone, it resurfaced. Every time I remembered Doug's expression when he said I would learn how hard it is to be a man, it returned. About a week after I left, Mom called. I stared at my phone before answering. "Brandon," she said cautiously. "Yeah." "Can we talk?" I stayed quiet, so she continued. "It's been quiet here. Tyler misses you." I almost laughed. "Tyler misses having someone to blame," she sighed. "We didn't mean for things to escalate. Doug was trying to teach you responsibility." "He took my money, Mom." A pause followed. "We were going to pay it back." "When? After Tyler's next vacation? After another truck upgrade?" Silence again. "I can't keep doing this," I said. "I'm not coming back." Her voice shook slightly. "We're still family." "Family doesn't do what you did," I replied calmly. "At least not the kind of family I want." I ended the call. That night, something shifted. The sadness was still present, but it was no longer overwhelming. It felt sharper, more purposeful. Instead of just trying to recover, I started planning. I documented everything: dates, amounts, statements. I collected screenshots of transfers, bills, and receipts. It felt detailed, almost excessive, but it also gave me structure. I researched legal options. I wasn't sure if I had a case, but I wanted clarity. I contacted a local legal aid office and scheduled a consultation. At the same time, I intensified my job search. By the end of the week, I had 2 interviews. They weren't high profile roles, but they were opportunities. I also opened a new savings account, one no one else could access. Gradually, I began to feel stable again. Then one Sunday afternoon, Mom showed up at Eric's apartment. I had just returned from an interview. Eric opened the door and looked at me as if to say this was mine to handle. Mom stood there holding a container of my favorite lasagna. She looked tired. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in. We sat at the kitchen table. "Doug thinks you're overreacting," she began. "That doesn't surprise me." She hesitated. "I think we made a mistake. I miss you. I know you contributed more than we acknowledged, but Doug says you still owe rent for the months you stayed." I stared at her. "You took my savings, and now you believe I owe more?" She didn't deny it. "You were living there." I stood, retrieved the folder of documentation, and placed it on the table. "That's what I paid," I said evenly. "Add it up. If you still believe I owe you, we can let a court decide." For the first time, I saw uncertainty in her expression. She left shortly after, leaving the food behind. When the door closed, I realized I wasn't at my lowest point anymore. I was rebuilding. The following week marked a turning point. I woke up clear-headed. The pain hadn't disappeared, but I had direction. My second interview went well, better than expected. It was for a logistics coordinator position at a mid-sized company. The hiring manager listened carefully as I described managing household expenses for 3 adults while working and studying. "That's real-world management experience," she said. "Many applicants lack that." By the end of the week, they offered me the job. The pay was higher than my previous position. It included benefits and growth potential. When I told Eric, he nodded approvingly. "That's your exit strategy. Build savings. Get your own place." I did exactly that. I minimized expenses, stayed disciplined, and accepted extra shifts when available. My first paycheck felt significant. I transferred most of it into my new savings account. Within 2 months, I had recovered nearly half of what had been taken from me. I also began going to the gym with Eric. At first, it was simply a way to channel frustration. Over time, I noticed changes. My posture improved. I felt physically stronger. That strength translated mentally as well. One afternoon, I ran into a former classmate at the store. She commented that I looked good, noticeably different. It caught me off guard, but it reinforced the progress I was making. I continued organizing my documentation. What began as record keeping now felt strategic. Then Mom texted again. "Can we talk?" She called shortly after. "Doug wants a family meeting," she said carefully. "He thinks it's time to clear the air." I agreed, not to reconcile, but to observe. When I walked into the house that Sunday, everything felt familiar yet distant. Doug sat at the head of the table. Tyler scrolled on his phone. "You've made your point," Doug began. "We know you contributed more than we thought, but staying away and refusing to help, it's gone on long enough." I remained quiet. "You're part of this family," he continued. "That means contributing." I slid my folder across the table. "That's my contribution. Every receipt, every bill. If that isn't enough, I can't help you." Doug didn't open it. "You can't put a price on living under my roof." "You did when you took my savings," I replied. Tyler spoke up. "So you're going to hold this forever? You just had to follow house rules." "Like what?" I asked. "Stay quiet while you benefit?" "I didn't come here to argue," I said. "I came to tell you I'm not coming back. I have a better job. I'm saving for my own place. I don't need this." Doug laughed dismissively. "You won't last on your own." "It's been 2 months," I answered. "I'm doing fine." I left feeling steady, not burdened. Over the next few weeks, my responsibilities at work increased. I identified a scheduling issue that saved the company significant money. My supervisor acknowledged it and mentioned potential advancement. I began apartment hunting and eventually signed a lease for a modest 1-bedroom near work. Moving in felt symbolic. That first night, surrounded by boxes and inexpensive takeout, I felt something unfamiliar. Calm. Still, I knew the situation wasn't fully resolved. A few weeks later, Mom's calls increased. She admitted tensions at home were rising. Bills were higher. Tyler had missed a car payment after overspending. I listened without comment. Eventually, I was promoted to team lead. The raise and schedule flexibility gave me further stability. I met with the legal aid attorney and presented my documentation. "You have a strong paper trail," he said. If they took your savings without consent, you may have grounds for a small claims case. Knowing I had that option gave me leverage. Meanwhile, I heard that Doug had been telling people I would return soon. That assumption was inaccurate. Then an opportunity appeared. At work, my boss mentioned needing a local subcontractor for a large shipment. Reliable, affordable, small business. Doug operated a side-hauling business that fit the criteria. I didn't respond immediately. I gathered details and noted the decision timeline. That evening, I called home. Tyler answered with his usual tone. "You coming back yet?" he asked sarcastically. "No," I said calmly. "Tell Mom I'm doing well. I was promoted." He responded dismissively. "You might also tell Doug," I added evenly, "that I have professional connections now. They could be helpful." I ended the call. A few days later, Mom called back. "Doug heard what you said," she said. "He wants to know what you meant. Things are tight." I leaned back in my chair, letting her words sink in. This was the first time she had admitted they needed me. "I'll think about it," I said, "but I have conditions." She didn't argue. She just said, "Okay." That night, I sat at my kitchen table and made a detailed list, not just of what I wanted from them, but of what they owed me, financially and emotionally. I wasn't going to let them back into my life on their terms. This time, it would be on mine. Over the next week, I quietly gathered more leverage. I asked my boss if I could observe the subcontractor vetting process, and she agreed. Doug's business was on the list. When his proposal came in, I nearly laughed. Overpriced, sloppy, full of hidden fees. Exactly the type of proposal that would be rejected. But I didn't act immediately. I kept that information to myself and waited. Sure enough, a few days later, Mom called. Doug was on speakerphone. "We heard you might be able to get us a contract with your company," he said, gruff but less smug than usual. "Maybe," I replied. "But, like I told Mom, I have conditions." "What conditions?" "I want my savings back, every cent. I want both of you to acknowledge that I contributed more than you credited me for. No more calling me a freeloader. No more lectures about being a man. Do that, and I'll see what I can do." A long silence followed. "That's blackmail," Doug said finally. "No," I said calmly. "That's negotiation." For the first time in years, I heard hesitation in Doug's voice. When I hung up, I felt something shift. I wasn't reacting to them anymore. I was setting the terms. I had power, and I wasn't afraid to use it. The next step would be crucial. When the tables turned, there would be no going back. The morning of the subcontractor decision, I woke early, brewed coffee, and reviewed every note, receipt, and email. This wasn't just about getting even. It was about changing the narrative. For years, Doug had painted me as the ungrateful kid, the freeloader. Today would flip that story. At the office, my boss led me into the conference room. A stack of subcontractor bids sat on the table. Doug's was on top. I stayed neutral as the team reviewed the other proposals. Cheaper, more professional, complete. Then it was time for his. "This one is overpriced," one coworker said, "with hidden fees buried in the fine print." I spoke calmly. "May I offer some context? I know the owner personally. Their reputation is for cutting corners, missed deadlines, last-minute price hikes, incomplete jobs. I've seen it firsthand." My tone was professional. It wasn't personal. My boss scribbled a note. "Exactly the kind of headache we don't want," she said. Doug's proposal went into the discard pile. I didn't gloat. I stayed professional. We chose a smaller, more motivated subcontractor who would do excellent work. Outside, the afternoon sun felt warm. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. This wasn't the explosive anger from before. It was calm, controlled, and satisfying. That evening, I called Mom. Doug answered. "Well," he said, no greeting, just that word. "They went with another subcontractor," I said simply. Silence. "You did this," he said, voice sharp. "I didn't make your proposal bad," I replied. "I told the truth when asked about you. You ruined nothing. I just stopped letting you ruin me." "You'll regret this," he muttered. "I already did for years, but not anymore," I said, and hung up. In the following days, Mom texted that Doug was furious and Tyler was lashing out. I didn't reply. Then, unexpectedly, the owner of the chosen subcontractor called to thank me. "You just kept my team busy for the next 3 months," he said. I smiled. Not only had I stopped Doug from profiting unfairly, I'd helped someone else succeed. Next, I focused on getting my savings back. I filed a claim in small claims court, attaching every receipt and statement. Serving the court papers, Mom called crying. "Brandon, how could you do this to us?" You did it to yourselves, I said gently. I just wanted us to be a family again, she whispered. You should have acted like one when I was under your roof, I said, ending the call. Word spread through town. Even Doug's clients started questioning him. The next time I saw him at the grocery store, he looked smaller, not physically, but his arrogance was gone. Tyler tried confronting me in the parking lot. You know what's really embarrassing? I asked calmly. Having to justify stealing someone's savings in court. He had no comeback. Walking away, I felt taller, lighter. The revenge wasn't about punishment. It was reclaiming my power, dignity, and life. The final chapter came with the court date. I arrived early, calm, prepared. Doug's face was red, tense. Mom looked drained. Tyler didn't show. I presented my folder, organized and complete, explaining contributions and unauthorized withdrawals. Doug tried to interrupt, but the judge stopped him. You admit you took the savings? She asked. Doug muttered yes. No buts, she said firmly. You cannot take someone else's money without consent. Return the full amount. I nodded, collected, unsmiling. Outside the courtroom, Doug seethed. Happy now? He asked. No, I said. You humiliated yourself the day you stole from me. Mom stepped closer, voice quiet. Brandon, I'm sorry. I believe you, I said softly. But sorry doesn't erase what happened. I can't come back from that. 2 weeks later, repayment arrived. Seeing my money returned felt like drawing a line in the sand. My apartment was fully set up, furniture chosen by me, flowers on the table, a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. My promotion at work continued to grow, and I had more responsibility and freedom. I visited Mom's house one last time, not to reconcile, but to close the loop. Doug opened the door, silent. I came to tell you something, I said. I don't hate you. I'm done being your scapegoat. I have my own place, my own job, my own life. You're not part of it. Mom appeared behind him, eyes hopeful. I wish you well, I said gently, but I'm not coming back. Tyler stepped outside. So that's it. You just walk away. Yeah, I said. All yours, the golden child spot, the bills, the tension. Enjoy it. I got in my car and drove off, feeling lighter than ever. That night, in my apartment, I noticed my savings had reached the goal I'd set. I poured a drink, leaned back, and smiled. I hadn't just survived their challenges. I'd built a better life. I raised my glass and said it aloud, just for me. Doug was right about one thing. I did become a man, just not the way he expected. I took a long sip, letting the quiet of my new life settle around me like a victory banner. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. I had already won. If you want,